Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live today. I'm so glad to see you all joining us, a lot of our regular viewers in the audience, as well as many new faces. So thank you all from near and from far for coming and joining us today. All you Americans in the house, we hope that you have a great Thanksgiving this weekend and lead up to the holidays. So with all the holidays coming, actually, it's a great time for us to let you know about our Black Friday DNA sale that we have going on here at MyHeritage. It's a fantastic sale. In the US, it is going for $39. So a really fantastic price on MyHeritage DNA kit. And today's session, I believe, will be talking somewhat about DNA. So we will get into more detail about how useful MyHeritage DNA kit is and why it's important to test other family members. So if you haven't found the perfect gift for some of the people on your list, now is the time to take advantage of this fantastic sale. In addition, this is a picture of the MyHeritage DNA kit over here. In addition, we have also another gift option. If you have family members that have already taken a MyHeritage DNA kit, we also now offer gift memberships on MyHeritage. That's for the MyHeritage Complete Plan. The MyHeritage Complete Plan is the best plan that we have to offer at MyHeritage. Free access to 12.7 billion historical records, unlimited family tree size, unlimited access to all of our photo tools. That's the MyHeritage Photo Enhancer and MyHeritage in Color. So altogether, an amazing gift for someone, a friend or family member, somebody who's just starting out their family history journey and would love to jumpstart it. So please consider those two options for anyone on your list that you are still looking for. In addition, at the end of today's session, we'll be giving away one MyHeritage DNA kit to a lucky winner. So all that you have to do to enter throughout the session today is just leave a comment for us. Let us know what you're looking for. We'll be talking about unknown parentage research. So let us know if there's somebody in particular that you're looking for, or a family member that you're searching for, questions that you have that are unanswered that you're looking for with your DNA. Or let us know something that you found about your family history on MyHeritage. We'd love to hear about your discoveries. So just leave us a comment in the comment section. And at the end of today's session, we'll be giving away one MyHeritage DNA kit to a lucky winner. So I would also just like to tell you, if you don't win today, as I said, there is the Black Friday deal. Fantastic deal. So we'll be putting all the links in the comment section. I see that they're already up there. So please take a look and you can take advantage of those. Today's session is really a very exciting one. It's a topic that I know we have a lot of users that are looking for more information about unknown parentage. So today we have with us Debra Renard. She's a specialist in genetic genealogy for legacy tree genealogists. She loves sharing that expertise with others, and she frequently speaks at the local, regional, and national levels. So it's really my pleasure to introduce her to all of you and welcome her to our show. Hi, Debra.
Hi, Esther. Thank you so much. Appreciate that introduction. Appreciate you having me today. I love speaking about genetic genealogy, and even more, I love doing genetic genealogy. I've been studying it and working with it for almost 7 years now. The first time I heard someone speak about it was at a conference. It was C.C. Moore was speaking about it, and I was a goner. Before the conference was over, I decided that's what I need to do. And I just really love the work. I have led a DNA special interest group here in Louisville, Kentucky, where I live, for about 6 years. And I have been working for legacy tree genealogists for almost 3 on their DNA research team. One of the things we'll be sharing with your audience today is our new offering. It's called DIY DNA, do-it-yourself DNA, and it is a little workbook that will be for free. And if you yeah, and if you get into that and find you need some additional professional help, then we have a little offering, a little package of consultations that can be purchased to go along with that. But many of you will perhaps that will be all you'll need, is that little workbook that we're going to be sharing with you. And it follows pretty closely along with the presentation I'll be giving today. And so there is not an additional handout. The workbook will sort of serve as that handout for today's presentation. Fantastic. So I guess we're ready to start, Esther.
Okay, great. I just want to also let our audience know that don't worry if there's something that you miss at any point in today's show. All of our Facebook Lives appear on our Facebook page after the session. So you'll see it at facebook.com/myheritage under the video section. This one, as well as all of our previous Facebook Lives. So in case you miss anything, not to worry. If you, you'll be able to rewatch it as many times as you'd like after. Let me bring up your slides now.
Thank you.
There we go.
All right. I'm seeing that very small. It's not filling my screen. Let's try this a different way. Okay. So, DNA methodology for unknown parentage research. So, what I'll be sharing with you today is my approach to this. Everyone might have a little bit different approach to doing this type of research, but this is what I've found works well for me. I've done hundreds of cases since I've been with Legacy Tree genealogists, and many have had a final solution. We have been able to solve their mystery. I do specialize in close unknown parentage more than the more distant brick wall approach. So that's what we'll be focusing on today. And some of the reasons for unknown parentage. DNA testing can help us solve adoption and foundling cases. Misattributed parentage events, or we call that's kind of a mouthful, so we just call those MPEs. Illegitimacy and or non-disclosure between parents. Donor conception. And then more rarely, fortunately, sometimes errors that occur at the hospital at the time of a birth, criminal acts such as kidnapping, or cases of amnesia. My cases are typically one of three situations. There may be an adoption or a foundling where neither parent is known. It could be that an MPE was discovered as a surprise through a DNA test. And this is probably what I encounter the most frequently, actually. People were not aware that their parentage was other than what they had always believed. But they did a DNA test, and somebody in the family also tested, and they didn't match them as they expected to, especially very often it's a sibling that turned up as a half-sibling. And again, that contradicts what they had always believed about their family. So it is a difficult situation to find themselves in. Usually, it's the maternal side that is known, and it's the paternal side that we're going to work on resolving. And then cases of illegitimacy also. I do have a fair number of those. In this case, the issue is not a surprise. The maternal side has always been known, but the father has always been uncertain. So the methodology that we use requires both genetic evidence and documentary evidence. For genetic evidence, you would want to have autosomal DNA test results at all of the major testing companies, either by actually testing there or doing a transfer into their database. You would want those test results for both the person seeking their unknown family, also for some known family members, if there are any, if it's not a case where both sides are unknown. You want test results for them as well, because as you'll see, that helps us separate out the matches for the known side and the unknown side. But the documentary evidence is also equally important for the person with the unknown parentage, but also for their matches and their ancestors. You're going to be working extensively with documents relating to them. So which of these is more important? Well, records can be mistaken. They can also be falsified. But on the other hand, DNA can, although we always say DNA doesn't lie, but it can be misinterpreted. If there's a contradiction between the two, generally you want to follow the DNA. Your success in your search will depend upon the quality of both your genetic evidence and your documentary evidence. And each case is definitely going to be unique. It's going to require some adaptation for the particular circumstances of that case. You want to lay a good foundation for your research. Review all the background information you can find, family stories, gossip, rumors, whatever it might be. You want to collect all of that. Very often there's a grain of truth. You want to gather all the relevant records that you can. If you're an adoptee, your options are going to depend upon the state in which you live in the United States, and I'm sure there are varying rules and regulations in different countries as well. You want to go ahead and write out your adoption story as best as you can, any of the circumstances surrounding that adoption, the locations that were involved, the dates, who handled that adoption. Was it an adoption agency? Was it a private adoption through a lawyer or a physician? The actual adoption decree, if you can get a copy of that, that can be very helpful. Any other related court records as well. Perhaps there was a related divorce or a custody battle of some sort. Then you want to register for what we call consent to contact. These are registries where both the birth parents and the child might register, and if they both do, then the registry will facilitate contact between them because they've both given consent for that contact. Sometimes states will have a provision for using a confidential intermediary, and this is managed by state agencies. And then you might request or you definitely want to request your original birth certificate if it's made available in your specific location. So here's an example of a website that shares the availability of original birth certificates by states here in the US. And it's that first URL there, adopteerightslawcom. And I'll just share with you a little bit, give you a little impression about what all these little icons here mean. If you see the green box with the white check mark, that means that that particular state does make original birth certificates available. The red lock means that they do not. The yellow lock that's partially open means that they do with some conditions. The red box with the X in it, that means that some of the certificate may be redacted. The calendar icon here means that there are certain, perhaps age restrictions associated with the availability. The two-way arrow here means the consent to contact registry, where that type of approach where both parties must agree for the contact to occur for a birth certificate to be released. I'm going to jump over here to the little guy here. It looks like a secret agent, and that just means that the birth parent has the right to veto the release of that birth certificate, so they can stay a secret, if you will. Their identity would not be revealed. The skull and crossbones, it's kind of interesting. They call that a zombie veto. That means that that parent's directive to not allow release of that birth certificate survives their death, that even after they are deceased, that veto continues on. So it's like they have that power even from beyond the grave, if you will. The money bag, just see that on a couple states. That means that their costs for providing these documents is relatively high compared to other locations. And finally, over here in Pennsylvania, we have the so-called pile of poo, which means that the agency involved with this, the person evaluating the states, felt that they portrayed that they would be releasing the original birth certificate to an applicant. However, when the applicant receives it, it's basically just a small extract of the original certificate. So they felt that it wasn't really what they promised they would get. So as you can see, it's quite variable from state to state as what the rules and regulations, what the laws are, and what you can hope to obtain from the state. I believe this website does keep this fairly up to date, so this is a good resource for finding what your options might be. Another site that will provide you with some valuable information is the AmericanAdoptionCongress.org. Now, if you are able to obtain your original birth certificate, it might only display your birth mother's information, especially if she was single at the time of your birth. If you have an OBC that does name a father, you want to be very cautious about that. If the birth mother was married and the father was not her husband, she may have provided her husband's name, even if she suspected that he was not the father. So her husband may be on the birth certificate as the father. Could be the case that the father was misidentified. In other words, the name for the father that's on the certificate is a real person. It's his correct name, but he was not really the father. So you want to consider that possibility. Another third possibility is that the name is just completely fictional, made up, either because she didn't know who the father was, or perhaps that he lied to her about his name and or his age. And I do find that that happens, and occasionally, and I have had this happen as well, the birth mother herself may give a fictional name and age also. So even though it is an original birth certificate that you obtain, you can always rely on the information contained on it being reliable. An alternative is, especially if the OBC is not available, is to request non-identifying information from an adoption agency. We call that non-ID for short. And this will be descriptive information about the birth family, but does not reveal their actual identity. And it can be quite detailed, and it can be about just one parent or both parents. Some of the fields that it might include are the parent's age, marital status, race and ethnicity, education, occupation and employment, their religion, their physical description, sometimes their medical history, and then the makeup of their families, the family that they came from. And it could have all these kinds of details about their family members too, not just about the birth parents. If you request non-identifying information, and if you're not satisfied with what you get back, you think that there should be more, or you didn't get anything at all for some reason, as I say here, if at first you don't succeed, ask again. It may be the case that policies at the adoption agency change over time, and they're more willing to share information. It could be just the particular person that you get on a given day, so what they're willing to dig into. So don't hesitate to try more than once. Here's an example of a non-ID form from a case I worked recently. As I said, it can be extensive, but it can be fictional, so just as with the original birth certificate, so you need to be aware of that. So this particular example was from a birth in 1963, and you see the two columns here, one column for the biological mother and one for the father, and lots of information was filled in here. Some of the same fields we just mentioned that could be included. This one even includes some of their interests. And something that can be very valuable is if the biological mother and or father have other children and what their ages are. So candidates for half siblings, perhaps. And then this one had a page 2 even. And so you can see that this is divided into 4 sections. There's maternal grandmother and maternal grandfather, and then paternal grandmother and paternal grandfather. So this was a great non-ID document here. And then these fields would be, of course, repeated for both areas here. And then down at the bottom here, you see other information, and there was quite a bit there. And they even kind of used about every blank space on here. You had some here that I had to blur out, and here, and then up here also. So there was lots of information added in here. Some of the key points that were included in this non-ID that were helpful in solving this case is back on page 1, they actually mentioned how common the parents' surnames were. That was pretty amazing and proved to be quite helpful. The second page, down in other information at the bottom, they included the number and gender of the siblings of the birth parents, the birth mother and the birth father. So it kind of related more to the page 1, but that's where they had room to add that information. And that was very useful in solving as well. And then to get very specific, the maternal grandmother, which is up here in this section, it included her occupation. And that occupation was mentioned in her obituary. She was a telephone operator. And that was another factor that helped solve this one. So one thing you can do is kind of construct a table, which as let's say you've worked through your matches, which we'll talk about that process in a little bit, and you've come up with some candidates, or maybe from family stories, you already have candidates. And so you can compare the non-identifying information that you've obtained with information that's known about proposed candidates for a birth parent. And that's what we're seeing here is a table comparing what the non-ID said with the candidates. And so in this particular case, it was the birth mother who was to have a common surname. The candidate that I came up with did. The age at the client's birth matched. Marital status, the age of her mother. The birth mother's occupation and heritage. That was the only one that was a little bit off, but it was like 2 different Scandinavian countries, and it was, probably pretty easy to confuse the 2, perhaps. Her father's age, she had X number of brothers, had X number of sisters, and so we wrote all of that exactly matched up. Biological father is the one who had the unusual surname, which he did. His age at the client's birth was correct, marital status, number of children, even physical description. He was associated with a particular organization. We confirmed that in newspaper research. The religion probably matched. We had information that his daughter was a member of that religion that the non-ID mentioned, and so on and so forth. So what we learned relative to both of the parents were that they actually married one another the next year. That's what the non-ID said, and that's what we found in records for our candidates that we were trying to prove. And we also found that the non-ID said that they had no other children together subsequently. So obviously the adoption agency had continued updating this information from time to time, and we did not find any other children for them other than our client. So you want to carefully study the adoptive family, their names, ages, birth locations, current location, their occupations. Sometimes an adoptive family will have some kind of connection to a birth family, perhaps through work, through their employment. And so an informal adoption occurred because of that relationship or association. You might even want to build a small tree for the adoptive family with just a few generations. You don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but it could be the case that the adoptive family is actually related to the birth family. So you want to take that possibility into account. Other members of the adoptive family who are alive at the time may have heard details about the birth family circumstances as well. So you want to interview your extended adoptive family to see if others might know additional facts. You want to then do groundwork if your case is an unknown paternity rather than adoption case. And some of it will be similar. You want to gather the information about the known birth mother, her date and place of birth, what her age was and where she was at the time of the child's conception, and the other fields that you see here, and particularly if she has other children. It's very important. And then you want to build a family tree for the known maternal side, back to at least the great-great-grandparents. I find it challenging often that clients don't understand why we are so interested in with cases of unknown paternity, why we're so interested in their mother's tree, the known side. And that's something that's very important in the process to gather that material as well. Now, this is going to be a speculative tree as you add to it. And so you need to make sure that the tree you're working with, you make it private, make it unsearchable, and you do that in the tree's settings. You would give the tree a name, something like the surname of the person seeking their birth family, followed by the abbreviation spec, meaning speculative. And this example we see here is from Ancestry, but of course you can do this as well in MyHeritage. And again, the important part is to build a tree somewhere that you can get record hints that will help you with your research as you go. Then you want to build your tree forward. You're doing some reverse genealogy so that you are aware of the maternal family surnames and the individuals on that side. And then for the person that's seeking their father, you will name that unknown father in the tree, or a grandfather, if that's your target, as UBF for unknown birth father. You're going to gather information on any suspected biological father candidates, similar to the data that you gathered for the known birth mother. Sometimes, and this is not all that infrequent in my cases, the birth mother will actually have a suggested name for the father, and so that's really helpful to work from. And then you want to get test results, at least at the 4 major companies. At Ancestry DNA, the big advantage there, of course, is the size of their database, although there were 18 million testers, but then there are other disadvantages there too, such as not having a chromosome browser and some other things. 23andMe has some unique features. You can test at MyHeritage DNA, or they generously provide the opportunity to transfer a results file into their database if they have, if you have tested somewhere else already. If you have unknown matches who are closer to you than 50 centimorgans, we suggest that you do go ahead and pay the one-time fee of $29 to unlock all of the tools that are available to you. And if you don't have unknown matches that are greater than 50 centimorgans, you may be wanting to wait a while till you get closer matches anyway. So, but yeah, when you do have matches that are close enough to work with, well, then do pay that fee to unlock the tools. There's a similar situation at Family Tree DNA. You can transfer a results file into their database as well. If you have unknown matches greater than 90 centimorgans, there is the cutoff I use, then you're going to pay a $19 fee to unlock all of their tools. And the reason I use a higher threshold there is because Family Tree DNA uses very small segments in their calculation of the total amount of DNA you share with a match. And as a result of that, their total that they say is shared with a match may be somewhat inflated. And that's a concern because the tiny segments may be too old to be genealogically relevant, or just too small to be valid even. It may be a false positive. So we'll often remove those tiny segments in calculating a new total of shared DNA at that company. I believe you can still transfer into living DNA as well with limited features. So if you've tested there, or excuse me, if you want to get into their database, you can possibly transfer in a results file there as well. And then you can also upload to the third-party company, GEDmatch, to access some of their specialized tools. You actually want to get additional autosomal tests for others on your known side. And that's because it's going to help you filter out your maternal matches, those who are not on the unknown side. And as far as who you would want to enlist to take a test on your behalf, the order of preference would be if your mother is available to do that. That, of course, would make it most easy to separate out the maternal matches. And in addition, because she's a generation older, you would get matches further back in history, if you will, or more distant matches, let's say. Your common ancestors will be further back in history. Second preference would be a half-sibling, still extremely useful for separating out one side of matches from the other. And then the third possibility would be a first cousin or a first cousin once removed, especially if the removal is such that they are a generation older than you. And they're very useful still because they will be shared with most of your matches on that cousin's side. Males, you would also want to consider taking a Y DNA test, at least 37 marker, 111 even better, and these are available at Family Tree DNA, to look for a pattern of surnames that might suggest what the surname of your father might be. If you do see a pattern, that's when, if you started with the 37 marker, you might want to go ahead and upgrade to 111 markers. You do want to take into consideration your ethnicity estimates. We review those usually first at 23andMe. You're going to check the ancestry compositions chromosome painting, is what they call it. And this helps you to determine which ethnicities are most likely only on one side, especially if it's a strong component in your admixture. And if there's no awareness of that heritage on your known side, such as your maternal side, then that can be a strong clue as to the ethnicity of your unknown parents. And for example, I had a case recently that had no knowledge of any Finnish heritage, and the results came back 49.9% Finnish, so that was a pretty good indication that this client's father was Finnish. If you're a male adoptee, you can also check the X chromosome down here at the very bottom for your maternal ethnicity, and you know that's going to be maternal because males only get X DNA from their mother. They get a Y chromosome, of course, from their father. You can also examine the mitochondrial DNA haplogroup and the Y DNA haplogroup if you're a male for clues, especially if it's an unusual haplogroup. If it's a generic European haplogroup, that's probably not going to be too helpful. But if it's something rather unique, then that could help as well. You might review your ethnicity at the other companies as well. This is an example of one at Ancestry. And you can see whether their predictions support those at 23andMe. You know, all the companies use different algorithms, different databases to which they're comparing your results. And so everybody's are going to vary quite a bit. And you want to keep in mind that these are estimates. It's an average. For example, at Ancestry DNA, they do 40 iterations of their testing algorithm, and then they calculate an average. And they also will give you a range of results. Here's somebody's that they're predicted to have an average of 35% heritage from Germanic Europe. But the range that was seen in all those iterations of their testing algorithm was anywhere from 31% to 68%. So that's obviously a huge range. So you don't put as much stock into a prediction that's that wide compared to one that might say 28 to 35%. Then you're going to be pretty, or at least more confident that that's a valid estimate. In particular, at Ancestry DNA, you want to note any what they call additional communities, which indicate where your ancestors may have lived in the last few hundred years. Now, your main ethnicity admixture relates to several thousand years ago, but these more recent communities can be helpful. For example, for this person, it might reveal that their French heritage that was predicted in the main table is more recently French Canadian. So we need to get very comfortable in working with our match lists and analyzing those. And let's say that one side of your ancestry is known. For example, you have some unknown or unexpected paternity. Then what you would want to do at all the testing companies is you would want to first find the known matches to you who share greater than a threshold that you set. For example, I often use greater than 90 centimorgans, which is roughly equivalent to about a third cousin. And then you would connect them into your tree if they're not already included in your tree. So again, these are your known side. So maybe your first cousin has tested, or a great aunt has tested, or you want to make sure that you include them in this table and include them in your tree. You're going to then compile a list of matches who are shared with these matches that are already known to you. And you're going to go at least down to that threshold that you set. And then you even want to look at the shared matches of the shared matches. And that will tell you some, particularly if the relative that you're using to examine shared matches is like a first cousin once removed. Yes, most of your matches who are on that same side will be shared with them, but some may not be. And so if you've compiled your list of matches who are shared with them, and then you look at those shared matches, then you'll catch some additional matches who are on that same side. And the importance of doing this is that this way these matches won't be considered as being related to you on your unknown side. So we're sweeping them out of the way. We're getting them out of the way of our research for the unknown side. Then, once you've removed those from consideration, you will analyzing the matches that are left, who are, again, greater than that threshold. We want to focus on the close matches where our most significant information is. If you have an overabundance of matches when you use that threshold, or conversely, you have a scarcity of matches, you can adjust that threshold accordingly. You don't have to use the same threshold for your unknown side as you do for your known side. As I mentioned earlier, for family tree DNA matches, we need to adjust the amount of DNA that they state is shared with that match, because they do include those small segments in the total. And many of those segments are too small to be valid or too old to be genealogically relevant. So you need to take that into account. And because of that, many matches who appear to share more with you than the threshold you set may not likely truly be within that threshold. So if they're not significant, we don't want to waste time including them. So the way to adjust the amount that's shared, you're going to view the match in the chromosome browser. And to do that, you need to have paid that fee to unlock all their tools. You're going to download the segment data for that individual, and then you will sort the segments by size, as we've done here in the centimorgans column. And then all segments that are less than 7 centimorgans, we're just going to delete them. We're going to delete those rows. And then, so that only, for this example here, that only left us with 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. And so we're going to sum the new total and consider that to be the amount that we truly share with this match. So just these top 4 rows here. And that took this match from, in the interface, it said that the tester shared 116 centimorgans with this match, took them down all the way to 78 centimorgans. So if you're using that 90 centimorgan threshold that I mentioned earlier, for example, then you would choose not to use this as one of your focus matches. Then you're going to construct a table that has the following columns, and we'll look at an example of this in a moment, but I want to review these with you first. So the columns will include the testing company, the match's username, their ancestral surnames, and the availability of those is going to vary depending upon where they tested. If you're looking at a match at MyHeritage DNA, hopefully you will have unlocked all the tools, and maybe you'll be able to see a tree and gather the surnames out of that tree for the first several generations. At 23andMe, they just list surnames in the interface. It's going to vary, but what information you can gather, you put in that column. You can then further group these matches into what we call genetic clusters, and these are groups that you determine probably share common ancestors. So yes, we are looking on one unknown side in the scenario we've been discussing here, but we've got 2 grandparents on that unknown side, right? So you're going to have at least 2 different lines, or 4 great-grandparents if it breaks out more at a higher level of detail. You want to have a column for the shared centimorgans, and again, you want to have adjusted that total for family tree DNA matches. Then you're going to have a column, these last 2 columns are most likely relationships and relationship probabilities. And this is information that you're going to obtain from a website called DNA Painter. They have something called the Shared Centimorgan Project that they have implemented, where you can actually enter the total number of centimorgans you share with a match here, and they will produce for you a table of relationship probabilities. So for this particular person, 90 centimorgans, it says there's a 31% probability that that's a half second cousin or second once removed, and then some additional possibilities, variations, equivalents, if you will. 30% possibility it's a third cousin, and 25% that it's half third or third once removed. So you're going to capture this kind of information in this table, and you're going to include them. You see down here at the very bottom, if you can see it, there's a probability that was 8%. I only include those probabilities that are double digit. I don't include the single digit ones to keep it a little bit simplified. And also I simplify which relationship descriptions I include. Like for this 30%, I would only include 3C and not all the different equivalent variations of that, although you may find that you have to go back and consider some of those later. But to keep our table simplified, here's an example of the matches that we determine must be on the paternal side because they were not identified in our earlier work identifying the maternal matches. by those who we knew and those who were shared with them. So these are, again, are the leftover matches, the unknown matches table. The first column is the company from whose database you retrieved this match, what their username was, any surname, and also lots of times I'll put in location information here if it's included, such as 23andMe. It may display the birth areas of the grandparents of the match. Genetic cluster, again, we're determining that, oh, these look like they're from the same line 1, and then these other ones look like they're from a second line, even though on the same paternal side. Here's the shared centimorgans with each, and then here's the information taken from the DNA Painter Shared Centimorgan project, so that we have an indication here of what level of relationship we think this particular match might have with us. And so that's what we work with. That's the meat of our research here, is this table. So in that column that had the listed the surnames that were provided either in a pedigree chart, in a tree, in just a listing, what I do is we mark the surnames that are shared by more than one match. I put those in bold so they jump out at me so I can see, oh yeah, there's 3 or 4 different matches here that have this surname in their ancestry. Then I make a first rough pass at the genetic clusters based on the shared matches and their surnames, as long as the surname isn't too common. You know, if they're Miller or Johnson or Smith or whatever, then I may not assign someone to the same genetic cluster just because they all contain that type of surname. These cluster numbers that are assigned to the matches, they're just sequential designations. So the way we do that is with the next match in the table as we go down the list that we have not already associated with a previous group, then we just give them the next available number. We're working towards separating, as I mentioned earlier, the 2 grandparents lines with this clustering work. Now, this is a very simplified approach for this. There is a much more sophisticated approach in Everett Janblom's Genetic Affairs, and that's a great clustering tool that would be a great alternative to do this work of separating into clusters. For adoptees, we need to modify this approach a little bit. Neither side is known, and we're not starting from a known side. So you're basically going to build 2 unknown tables to divide your matches into a group A and a group B. It's based on distinctly separate shared matches. You're going to use the same columns as we did in this previous table we just looked at. Here's an example below where group A, I included the matches who shared greater than 90 centimorgans with the tester. For group B, I had to move down that threshold down to 50 centimorgans to get enough significant information. Didn't mention this earlier, the check marks in the centimorgan column, I use those to designate which matches I successfully identified who they were and were able to connect into my unknown tree and determine who their common ancestors were. So in this table, the portion we're seeing at least, there were 3 that I could figure out how they're connected to one another. And this is on one side of the adoptee's family. And on the other side over here, I had 4 that to this point at least, I had been able to identify and connect into one tree. When I say connect into one tree, I want to make an important point here that I don't think I capture here. You actually build them in the same tree as you started with your known family tree. You don't actually build in a separate tree. You just connect them into anyone. And I may cover this actually in a moment. But you connect them in, and then you're going to that's how you'll get them into the tree, and then you'll disconnect that relationship, and then they will be a separate floating tree within the same tree. The reason that's important is because later on, when you figure out, you're able to confirm the relationship to the tester, you want to be able to just hook up one tree with the other without having to do a complicated tree merger of some sort. And so it's better if they're just separate trees in the same tree, and then connect them when you know how they relate. Okay, so again, you're working to connect these matches in the same cluster or group into one tree. That's why we had the check marks. You're going to start with the closest match who has an attached pedigree, or maybe it's an unattached public tree of some sort. If the match is very close, even if they list the fact that they do not have a tree, go ahead and try to identify who they are, just based on the username, or if you're lucky enough that they have a logical name for their username, a first name and a last name, that's great. You can, some techniques for trying to identify them without a tree is you will search the match lists on their surname if shown in the user ID. Check the match's profile, member directories. You can just Google them, especially if there's some combination of names. Look in newspapers, message boards, people finder sites like Been Verified, for example, Spokio, others. If you can't identify who that close match is pretty quickly, don't spin your wheels there too long. Move on to the next closest. For unknown paternity, then you're going to add the close paternal match into your maternal tree. This is what I was describing a minute ago. Anywhere as a parent or a child to anybody, there doesn't have to be any kind of logical relationship. Now, I realize that for an adoptee tree, you're just starting with U, UBF for unknown birth father, and UBM for unknown birth mother, of course. You are then going to detach them through the edit relationship or the other interface at other companies, and delete that relationship that you created artificially. And so now you have this floating unattached tree, but again, do not create a completely new separate tree. Want it to be easy to join them together when the time comes. And then you just start building what we call a QDT, a quick and dirty tree, or a quick and speculative tree, maybe is a better way to put it. You're using the match's pedigree or their full tree for hints. You are solving for the unknown birth father. When you're doing that, it's really a lot of tree building, and more tree building, and more tree building. You're doing at this point very limited verification. This is not a genealogical proof standard effort at this point. You're trying to build it as quickly as you can, with, of course, reasonable assumptions. But the goal right now is not to build a fully validated tree, but to find the birth parent candidates. And eventually, of course, you will want to use fully documented sources to prove the line that you propose for that birth family. As you build back in time, what you're looking for is ancestors in common with other matches. Sometimes when it's become very apparent what the line of connection is, you may only build one side for a certain match if known surnames and locations are showing up, and you'll focus on that one side at first. That's not to say that if things aren't coming together, later on you can go back and build the other side. But the thing to keep in mind for you as the seeker is to remember that these matches' common ancestors are likely yours as well. That's why they're showing up to you as close matches that you've determined. You're going to build forward to incorporate other matches into the tree. When I include a match into the tree, I use the suffix field for the name. I put in how the number of centimorgans that are shared with that, or you could put it just as an extension of the surname perhaps, but I use this dash space DNA and then the number of centimorgans shared. So it's easy to visualize how close the relationship is, but the other advantage is that you can do a search on the word DNA and just bring up a list of all the matches you've added into that tree. And then that's when I add the check mark in the centimorgans column in the table to indicate that I've successfully added in this match. I love the fact that MyHeritage DNA and 23andMe both show how the matches are related to each other. That is so helpful. For example, here, this is from my results, and this match to me is my first cousin. But now this is on a page for a match in my match list. I've gone into their page, and then these are the matches that I share in common with this match. So this match I share in common with the main match whose page I'm looking at is my first cousin, and it's this match's father. So that can be big hints as you're working. As far as identifying then those birth parent candidates, once the multiple matches are connected into the same, I call them subtrees because it's trees within the tree. You need to identify possible locations in the tree where the tester could fit. So we've built this tree from our unknown side, and we need to figure out, okay, where is it that I fit in here? There's a tool at DNA Painter, the same company that has the same website that has the shared centimorgan project, where you can plug in your shared DNA to get the relationship predictions. This tool is called What Are the Odds, or we call it WADO for short, and it helps to determine where a target person could fit into a tree using the amount of DNA shared with matches in the tree. They recently came out with a beta version 2 where you can actually enter in the birth date of the tester, birth and death dates of the others in the tree, and it helps you to see and eliminate unfeasible possibilities. You also need to evaluate the resulting candidates considering other factors, of course, such as what the mother's age was, what this person's location was relative to the conception, and so forth. It gives you the ability to specify half relationships, which is very important because that's going to change your outcome significantly. So again, this assumes that you've already built a tree based on the unknown matches and documentary evidence associated with them. And you're going to then replicate that tree within this WADO tool. You will need to know where multiple matches fit into this tree. It's not so useful if you only have 1 or 2 matches here. So here we got an example with 5 matches that we've determined how they're related to others. And you need to enter the amount of DNA that they share with you as the target person here. And then we create hypotheses for where we think it makes sense that you might fit in this tree. And if WADO gives a positive score for that hypothesis, they're saying that it is possible. If they give a score of 0, then that means that they don't consider that a possible position for you in this tree. The higher the score is, the more likely that that is the correct hypothesis. It's a wonderful tool. I use this in just about nearly every case I do. So once you've decided, okay, who's the most likely candidate based on this and other circumstantial evidence, you're going to merge this most likely candidate into your spec tree, going to merge them with the UBF or UBM placeholder that you created. So you add them in the tree, merge them in, or you can just edit the placeholder. It'd be another possibility. But if this person who's the candidate is already in your tree somewhere and you decided, oh, this guy over here, he's the unknown birth father, then you would do a merge. And then you're going to evaluate the feasibility of that candidate's position in the tree by checking the resulting relationship to your matches and compare that with the relationship predicted by the DNA. So this is another table that I use to do that comparison. So these usernames here are matches that I've successfully added into the tree. If I've just, I've already gone through the process of identifying who they are, so I can capture their full or genetic name here if it's different from the username. These two columns, most likely relationships and probability, it's taken back from that first unknown matches table where we access that information from the shared Centimorgan project. And I just copy that information in here for these. And then I compare that prediction and probability to what the actual relationship is that's shown, assuming whoever I've determined is the best candidate, assuming them as the father in this case, or it could be the grandfather or whatever relationship you're solving. And so the DNA predicted that this person that shares 806 centimorgans was a first cousin with about 95% probability. When I plug this person into the tree, they come back as a first cousin. That's the relationship that's displayed for this person. So it's confirming the proposed candidate that you've identified by seeing, okay, do the matches come out to be the correct relationship to me if this person is my father, for example. If you're stuck, to wrap things up here in a moment, you can just wait for better matches, but you'll want to consider doing targeted testing instead. You will want to invite people whose DNA may hold an important clue, invite them to test. You, of course, want to offer to pay for their test. You do, however, want to make sure that they understand the inherent risks in DNA testing as far as secrets that may be revealed about them, perhaps. Make sure that they understand. You also want to be patient and stay hopeful. Once you've identified a candidate parent or other birth family, you will use people finder websites. As I mentioned, been verified in Spokio, do have a fee for use. You can use social media like Facebook, use that a lot, LinkedIn to locate contact information. You're going to invite the candidate family, their descendants, their relatives, to perform some confirmatory testing for you. It's important to just keep in mind that everyone has the right to knowledge of where they came from, but no one has the right to insist on a relationship. So you need to go into the contact keeping that in mind. At our Legacy Tree Genealogists blog, we have some great resources for suggestions as far as reaching out to your newly discovered birth family. The URLs, there's actually two, are included on the worksheet that we'll be sharing with you today, the workbook. At the very end, it includes these resources for ideas for how to make this contact, because that's one of the toughest parts of this process. And so, Esther, that's the conclusion of this presentation, and we can open things up for some questions now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Debra. That was so informative. And as a few of our viewers commented, Debra wrote here, it's great that MyHeritage will have this available for repeated viewings. So that's true. Anyone who missed part of it, there was obviously a lot to take in. You're seeing some of these terms for the first time and not as acquainted with all this whole process. So definitely watch it again, watch it a few times. It'll be available on the MyHeritage Facebook page under the videos section, as well as all of our past Facebook Lives. So you could definitely go back and take a look there. Before we get to questions, I just, Debra, I want to read out a couple of great comments that we received. Bev said, I found out that I had an unknown half-sister 10 years older than me that had been given up for adoption. Now I want to find her birth mother, who was an orphan. She spoke Russian and is a mystery to me.
Wow.
So, Amazing. I mean, these stories, you hear them and you understand really the longing and just all these feelings of really wanting to learn more. It's incredible. So really amazing. Heather wrote, looking forward to this session. My husband was adopted and his biological parents passed away, but I would love to research his biological father's side. So Heather, I hope you have some new tips to kind of take away with you today now. Let's get to a few questions. Let's see what we have here under questions. Let's see. Deb asks, my grandmother died in a psychiatric ward of a hospital. Is it legal to get copies of her records? She died in 1915.
That's probably going to depend upon the institution. They would likely have control of those records, unless sometimes they are turned over to state archives or national archives, and are publicly available to a point. But that's going to be a pretty specific situation as far as what might be available to her.
Okay. Ralph says, my brother came up as an uncle or as an uncle. How can that happen?
You may want to consider the possibility that he is your half brother, and you can do other testing of other relatives to, confirm or refute that. But it sounds like there may be an alternative relationship that you weren't expecting, perhaps. And let me say also, and this is in response to Heather, who made the comment about maybe now she can figure out her family mystery. This workbook that we're making available to you today, again, it's DIY DNA, do it yourself. It's going to help guide you through this process. A lot of the tables that I showed in the presentation are included in that workbook, and so again, it'll be a refresher and a guide to help you through this process. And again, if you find you need some professional assistance, we're here to provide that too.
Incredible. Nancy asks, looking for a great-grandfather who had a fictional name. Any advice?
So great-grandfathers, so that's within the realm of definite solvability for autosomal DNA. The working through the matches, building the trees, that process, it's very repetitive, but you just keep digging, and eventually it's going to point to, oh my gosh, this person has to be a descendant of this ancestral couple, that this is likely the surname. And you're going to, again, work with factors taking into account things like age and location and all that. And you just keep hammering away at it, and eventually it gets revealed. It's amazing. It really is.
I see a few questions here about the workbook. So we put the link to the workbook in the comment section. So you'll see it there if anyone is still looking for that, and we hope that it'll help you. Let's see, we have a question here from Connie, and she asks, how common was it in 1890 for a family member to adopt another family member's child?
Yeah, that happened a lot, especially in like the mid 1800s, I would say, but it probably was still pretty prevalent in 1890, where and it would often be an informal adoption. Actually, there wouldn't be a legal process at all. They would just take the person into their household who had been often orphaned, and then that person would say they perhaps had a different surname. They would take on the surname of that adoptive family without any formal record of that having occurred. And again, those cases are solvable. They're challenging, but the DNA doesn't lie.
Okay, that's all the time that we have for questions today, and I'm sorry we're not able to get to more. There's just so much interest in this topic. I see that it's just It's such a touching topic for so many people, and we hope that today's presentation from Debra will really help you delve more into it. And as she said, so much of her lesson is a DIY tool for you to go forward now and take it for yourself. And please let us know what you discover from everything
Yes,
that
I'm always
you
so excited.
look into now. We've received so many, Debra, I'm sure you'll take a look at the comments later,
Yeah.
but so many amazing stories here of people searching, of people who have found family. So just incredible. Keep sharing with us. And if you do find out a little bit more about your family or lost family members, please do share with us. We'd love to hear those stories as they come back to us. Today we'll be giving away, as I said, a MyHeritage DNA kit to
Yay.
one lucky winner. And that DNA kit today is going to Joan Larkin. Joan commented and she said, "My father was orphaned at age 2 and was raised in a Catholic boys' home. He is now deceased. I have his parents' names, but no other information. I have found several married couples with the same names, but no children with the same name as my father or his brother." So Joan, congratulations on winning the DNA kit, and we'll be in touch with you through private message to claim your prize. We hope that with this kit, maybe you'll be able to get a little bit further in your research and let us know what you find out about your father's family.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Thank you, Debra, so much for joining us today.
You. Really enjoyed it.
What a presentation, really just so informative and thorough. And we all really enjoyed learning about this topic that we just have so much. So I know that a lot of people here just say now they have a lot of homework
Yeah.
they have to get to. So hopefully, over the holidays is a perfect time for sitting down and getting some of that done. So thank you so much for joining us. And to all of you out there, thank you for coming today. Happy Thanksgiving to anyone in the United States, and have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.